explain. Oh, kind of made me nervous there. Okay.
I'm recording.
Yeah. So what we are doing is, this is the normal home tab, if you will, for this document. And I don't, let's see, Heather, as you hear me talk about things, because Heather has the screen pulled up, but then I'm the one yapping. So if you will, like, put your cursor and stuff like that wherever I mention certain areas. So this is the same thing that you guys have already seen. We have it broken down by facilitator and then further broken down by county. And yeah, and then we go over to column D, and we are showing that for each of those counties, this is what we're seeing, the number of practices in each of those counties. And then going over to E, this is the total number of clinics per facilitator. So that's the total of D, basically. Let's just put it that way. E cell down there is the total of everything in your counties combined. So Tina, I hope you continue to love me and adore me like you do. I'm sorry that you're always our guinea pig and at the top of the line there, but I hope you're okay with that. And if you're not, we'll go down and we'll use Heather. I'll make Heather my guinea pig. But so what we are looking at is the total number on E. So, oh, Heather went ahead and scrolled down. So Heather has 73 total practices in the OPCP database. And then scooching on over to column F, we are looking at the total number of clinics contacted for recruitment. So looking at Heather's numbers here, she has contacted according to REDCap, and we are pulling this out of REDCap, so it is more real time of what's entered rather than waiting on SSRS to accumulate these numbers for us and do all that fun stuff. So F is representative of the number of practices that we see that you have reached out to, not the number of reaches, but the number of practices you've reached out to. So looking at column G, that is the total number of clinics you have left to reach out to according to the number in the PCP database, minus the number of clinics you've already reached out to. And then column G, that cell in your section of column G, is the number of clinics you have left to reach out to. Okay, and then we went a little bit further, looking at column H, which we don't have all of these numbers. This is something that Heather and I were continuing to work on this afternoon, but up to this meeting. So column H represents the total number of clinics declined on 11/22 or prior. So all of those clinics that had declined previous to the project leaders changing the criteria to include chronic pain diagnosed patients and not just opioid patients or opioid prescribed patients. So that number we will pull again from REDCap, and we will show based on your declined status for that clinic and the date that they declined. And we'll provide you a total in that cell there. So on Heather's H24, we'll have a total that we will include there. And then moving over to column I, this column represents the total number of clinics contacted for recruitment for that second reach after they had, if they fall in that category of their first decline being on or before 11/22. Okay, and then J column will be the result of H minus I. So the total number of clinics that qualified for a second reach minus the number of clinics you have reached out to a second time. And then J will show us this is how many you have pending to reach out to. Okay, and we're basing that I number on column I, we're basing that on the number of second enrollment status forms you have entered into REDCap. And then finally on column K, this is a lonely little number out there that represents the total number of clinics you have let us know that you have in a health system. And we have collected this number based on your individual spreadsheets, on you saying, yes, this is a health system, or no, it's not a health system. So that's what that number represents, are those clinics that you identified that, yes, they are part of a health system. What questions do you have regarding these groups of calculations, these categories? Is it clear as mud?
This is Missy. I was just wondering on like our total number of practices, column E, does that include, so based on like the feedback we gave on the spreadsheet, like for instance, there were specialty clinics or hospitals or things like that from the database that weren't like actual primary care clinics to reach out to. Is that number represent what's real or what, just what's in the database that's pulling right now?
So right now, and this is, and I'm glad you brought this up, Misty, this is something that we are in the works, but for now, that number will represent all of those clinics as well. Now, with that being said, and also without me not getting too far into the weeds on this, we have been working with Jolt to better see how we can better organize that to be able to better identify those types of clinics, so we can then weed them out of this type of spreadsheet or recruitment opportunities for future projects, or even as we continue through this project and do no harm and SBIRT. So, but for now, Missy, it does include those numbers still, until we can get to that point where we can fully update the OPCP database and be able to provide more specific categories. We do have a long list of categories, and we just don't think it's very realistic to be able to include all of those categories, but you know, what makes the most sense for the database. But anyway, very long answer to say yes, that this number does currently include that. As you go through your individual spreadsheets, you are identifying, for the most part, you guys are identifying those clinics and why they are declined, and you know that they're a pediatric clinic or an urgent care but don't see primary care, you know, those types of clinics, and being able to mark them as declined. So we are seeing those, and we will be doing calculations on each individual spreadsheet. But here we just want to be able to see on this home tab kind of an at a glance at your overall recruitment efforts. So if, for instance, Heather stays at 37 and still has 36 remaining, we can look and look a little bit deeper and say, well, why does she have 36 remaining that she hasn't reached out to? Well, as you can see in column K, 27 of those are part of a health system. And then the remaining difference between those numbers, as we can see in Heather's individual spreadsheet, this many fall in specialty clinics and they don't qualify. So this many will be ineligible. So
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Are
No,
you
go ahead.
saying, are you saying, I'm hearing this right? If it's, for instance, if it's a, like I have one that's a prison, do I go ahead and mark it as declined because I know it's not eligible?
So if we'll get there in just a second. How's
Okay,
that?
sure.
You don't, and if you don't mind us using that one as an example, I think that will be a perfect example because I did see it in there yesterday. What other questions do we have? Is there something you would like to see on the home spreadsheet?
And it might be good, Crystal, as we go through here and the PFs actually get onto their tabs and see that, it might be beneficial to add another column in between here as to which of those numbers on column D maybe truly don't count. But
Yeah.
reflect it and leave it for now, but maybe we can really discern what is the true number of clinics for those counties.
Yeah, yeah, maybe we can include an ineligible column or something like that, assuming, but we're counting on you guys to be able to, and we'll get into that a little bit more here too, is that in order to be able to do that and be accurate about it, we need to be sure that we are updating our individual spreadsheets correctly and accordingly based on what we'll show you here in a second. Courtney, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, the only thing I was looking at, since you guys have got mine pulled up there, with the first column there with Adair County and Tulsa, I mean, the thing about that is that that's crossing over into Kathy and Tina's recruitment as well. So hopefully, some of those aren't looking at like, for Adair County, for instance, because I'm currently working with that county, with that clinic in that county, I have, definitely been the one talking with the clinic manager on that. And I will say that I think I'm actually going to have a possibility of them, instead of a decline, I think I've almost talked her into participating. So, but as far as like numbers, as far as numbers are concerned, I know some of us cross over with some of these, and if we have groups that extend into other counties, and that's why that looks like I've got those clinics, because they're actually attached to other clinics that are in a different county that I am assigned to.
Yeah, and so that goes a little bit deeper. And Heather, I will let you explain what you have already done regarding those particular areas. Those are kind of crazy odd areas, and we have a lot of clinics that fall into those. One clinic, it'll literally be in a town, but a county line goes right down the middle of it, and the clinic is right across the street from it. I mean, it's silly crazy. But but I think, Heather, you had tried to account for that best you can. So I'll let you explain what you had done there.
Yeah, so if you see any movement with, like, you're going to see this, Courtney, like this indication right here, that Adair County and Tulsa, and then up here with some of these, this Pushmataha -1 to Jennifer, like I took based off of who made the contacts and moved that clinic for now onto your tab in the spreadsheet. So, and I made a note in there that even though this is technically not your county, you are already in the practice, or you are the one who reached out because you have that relationship. There's a little bit of overlap between several of us, actually. Like, I'm not even supposed to be in Oklahoma County right now, and I still have 3 that I was working with at the time when we started this project. And so I have been the recruitment PF for those 3. So there's a little bit of overlap between all of us, but I have separated out on the spreadsheet and included notes with that as well. If there's a clinic that belongs to you, that you have been the one recruiting for it. So we'll see that whenever we go to some of these tabs. Did I explain that well enough?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So as Heather is seeing that in your notes, or in any added notes that you've provided in your own tab, or there's been a discussion, yeah, she's tried to account for that in this column A for those of you that have that situation.
And if something comes up along the lines in your spreadsheet, I mean, that I need you guys to tell me that, like, make note of it on that OFIC notes section, to where you can say, hey, this is different county, but I've been or so-and-so is the recruiting PF for this clinic. Make note, and I'll keep moving stuff as we go for now. but I did the best I could with what I had so far.
No, that's a good question because that's happening probably to all of us at some point or another.
Yeah, I just know that you guys are, reporting back too with leadership. And so, I know that you guys understand that this kind of stuff is going on, but I just, just pointing out that, that stuff is there. So the numbers look a little bit larger than what they really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the numbers look smaller because if they are part of a group and we haven't really talked to just that clinic, we're not making entries for 5 clinics in, one organization, especially if they're not interested or haven't responded to us, I guess, really.
Yeah.
Now, question, that being said, if we do have a bigger group, so, okay, for instance, today, Tina was with the Stigler Health and Wellness, talking with them and doing that second reach out just to check back and make sure that, they haven't changed their mind. And she did get a decline on it. And I know I've already documented that my clinics that are in that group before, whenever she had reached out. So even if we haven't been to that clinic, but we know that organization as a whole has declined, at that point, we would need to go into each clinic and mark that, correct?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So each one of those locations will need their enrollment status form entered that they have declined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure because I know I've personally talked to a couple of other facilitators that we have shared organizations. And so I have a feeling that we're going to be having a few of those come up.
Yeah, no, and actually I'm glad you brought that up, Courtney, because I know several of us are in that situation too, where communication is going to be really, really important in those situations that you guys are picking up the phone or texting or whatever, emailing with each other. Using this example with the Stigler Health and Wellness group, that be sure to put that in your note when you enter that second enrollment status. If it is a second reach, be sure that you add that in the note. Tina met with administrator. They declined on behalf of all clinics for the system, the health system, and put that added note in there for each one of those declined status notes.
This is Kathy. I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of, I think 3 large health systems in my area. Do we have an update on like Ascension?
No, we have our meeting tomorrow morning, but as of last Wednesday, they're still stuck at the IRB place. I don't know what the holdup is there. But no, sorry, I don't have an update on that one. Or other than it's the same update.
Okay.
Yeah. And with that particular group, because I know I've got a couple of them randomly here and there, and I've never really approached them for any of our projects before. Do they know, like, has anything been said, like, these are the areas that we would like, we definitely want to recruit from this town, this small town, that town? Is there any of that kind of discussion going on with the big groups?
Yeah, well, with some of them. So like using Ascension as an example, they're, I don't know if it's a CEO or CEO, I don't remember which person it is, but anyway, he has identified, not to us specifically, but he does have specific clinics in mind that once this IRB piece is done, he wants us to work with those specific locations. Now, other organizations or health systems haven't necessarily done that, but yeah, some of these groups have, which is nice because then we can specifically reach out to those locations and have that added support.
Okay, very good. And I have another question too. I know that, are we doing 3 waves? Is that correct?
That is our goal. For sure,
Okay,
we
okay.
have to do 2. We are
Okay.
doing our very best to push for 3.
Okay. All right. I just asked because when I was at my clinic today, talking to her again about the project and just kind of, I let her know that we've just now kicked off with our wave 1 and wave 2 would be starting, before too long. And so I was just kind of curious about that 3rd wave, and because I didn't want to say, oh, we'll have another one start up, 3 months later, and then possibly want to participate then, and then we find out, well, we can't, we want to push them to
Yeah.
wave 2. And I just
Yes.
didn't want to put it out there unless it was for sure going to happen. So
Yeah, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not a for sure thing yet. So let's definitely not give the hopes of, hey, we're doing wave 3 in June. I can put you off until then. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of that. The way recruitment is going, it's been really hard. I mean, it's been hard for you guys across the board for all of your practices. So
well, let me
unfortunately,
tell
we don't
you,
have that luxury.
I'm finding that a lot of stuff has changed since the end of last year with some of my clinics.
Good.
Like,
I mean,
well,
hopefully
no,
it
I mean,
sounds like
it's not good. It's
Oh, I
not
was like,
good.
I was like, I'm assuming it's for the positive. I don't know.
No, it's not, because it's
Uh,
like clinics closing and like management changing or ownership changing, and just a lot of kind of crazy, I can't believe that this is happening to certain clinics. So
that
yeah,
stinks. Darn it. I was trying to be
I
optimistic,
know.
Courtney.
Oh, I know. No, I trust me. I know, because I
Yeah.
just talked with my homestead clinic, and the reason why it triggered is because I did an follow-up email again with them. And I got an automatic email back saying the guy that I've been talking to, and I've met him in person and everything, that he is no longer with the clinic. And then I've got a friend that works at the clinic. And so I texted her and I was like, hey, what's going on? And then she's telling me that they're supposed to be bought out by another group and this and that. And it's just kind of crazy because, the doctor owns that clinic. He has 2 of them, and they were doing so well. And now they can't keep anybody employed, and their finances have been a hot mess for the past couple of years. And I'm just like, wow. And I think they're the only clinic in Bristow anymore, because Utica Park and the hospital clinic all shut down. And the Utica Park clinic in Cleveland shut down. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's well, and that's why I said, well, I was trying to be optimistic, because unfortunately I've been hearing a lot of that, not just with this project, but other projects that I'm working on with family medicine. And it's been a tough game. Really, it has. And well, I'll just kind of leave it at that. You all know I'm kind of preaching the choir if I go in too far, but I hate this for the medical world right now. It's been tough.
Yeah, and I just think it's important that all of that is captured as much as possible, because it, is, like I said, we see it. Leadership doesn't see it like we see it. And, they're the ones that have to go back and say, hey, this is this, and this is why. I think this go round has been a real eye opener. Because I feel like personally with my area, a lot of stuff has changed within just 2 or 3 months lately.
Yeah. And we do communicate with the leadership what we're reading and what we're seeing in EPR notes, and what that kind of conversations with you all. So we're trying to pass that on, and as much as we can, because much like you are with your families, and you're an advocate for your family. I'm an advocate for you guys, and I want to be sure that they are fully understanding they have a piece of the responsibility as well with these health systems, because as you can see, like Heather, if you scroll down to the bottom of this spreadsheet right here, we have 534 clinics just based on what we know that fall into that health group or health system category. That's 534 practices that we're leaving on the table that we may or may not have been able to reach out to. Now, some of you have because you have existing relationships or you've been able to get into the door. I get that, but this is my job to show that, hey, we've got this happening out here too. We've got clinics that are shutting down. We've got clinics that are part of the health system. These are things that you promised you would assist with. And so I'm constantly working on your behalf for sure. But it's I need to hear from you though, if those things are happening, if you definitely are having clinics that are shutting down or the staff is dropping. We need to definitely talk about that because that trend is starting to become more and more prevalent.
Hey, can I share something, please?
Sure.
So I may not be so great on recalling how long ago, but as I reflect on some changes that occurred in family medicine, I'm going to speculate it was about 15 years ago that insurances started having different requirements. Medicare set a standard that electronic record would be used versus paper. And when that happened, family medicine, private practices made decisions whether they would retire or whether they would continue and spend a whole lot of money that they probably couldn't afford, or they would gather with other groups. And then they would bring in nurse practitioners and PAs. And so that changed the culture for private practice family medicine. Or they would decide to move and merge with a group. So when that happened, we started to see that breed of family medicine. Our family doctor was no longer existent and people were afraid of it, but it happened anyway. So that happened. So that's why we probably see so much of the systems. And then I think the other thing that happened is that we experienced a pandemic. And I think that family medicine is challenged with a lot, and they just don't always feel like they have enough space to add something else that's an elective. When it becomes mandatory, they do it because they have to get paid. But when it becomes optional, they can't say that that's a priority. And I think that everybody that works with our team does a good job.
Absolutely.
I can see that. I can understand the feelings people get when we talk about this. It's makes us a bit uncomfortable, but we keep trying. And we are dealing with a pandemic that affected the consequences of participating in projects, and that's all part of research. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Courtney says she agrees with you. She put that in the chat.
I agree too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
I 100%
hard.
agree. It is so hard to
Yeah.
get anybody to do anything right now that like you said, I mean, if they're not getting paid for it or if they're not being told to do it, they just don't, it's not a priority.
It's hard to
I
make it a
also-
priority. Yeah.
I also think that bleeds over into the health systems too. And because I say that because, you know, we pushed Utica Park so hard for do no harm. And, you know, Jeff Galvez wanted it. There was a handful of the providers that wanted it, but I'm going to tell you, the moment that Jeff left that clinic that I was working with, those other providers did not give a crap about that project and literally had one say, if they're not making me do it, I'm not going to mess with it. And I mean, and I'll tell you mainly what he was saying that to was the PEG score part. I'm like, how do you have that attitude about something like that? That's like saying, well, they're not making me do the depression screening, so I don't care to do it for my patients. I mean, like if you're treating them for pain and you're prescribing it, why wouldn't you? But that was the attitude. And because the health systems really push their bonuses, and they have those metrics that they have to make, that they have to meet. And that's what they focus on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it is. So that's why sometimes it's hard to sell these projects, because if they don't see some sort of money, something attached to it, then they're just like, that's just one more thing that I'm going to have to do. And I really don't want
Yeah.
to.
And you almost can't blame them half the time because you see how overworked they are.
Not only that, but you have, like Renee was saying, a lot of nurse practitioners now are in these individual clinics, and they don't get paid as much as an MD or an DO. So they're doing all the same work that an MD and DO does, but they're not getting paid even per visit what the other ones are getting paid. So they really, and I mean, truth is, some of our best clinics that we have are those nurse practitioner clinics, and they do put the work in. But that's just because they come from a different side of the healthcare to start with. And generally their bedside manner is so much different than a physician's bedside manner.
Yeah. Yeah. Deanne, you had unmuted. Did you have something?
Well, I know with St. Mary's, they have, or did have a quota that they had to see 25 patients a day, and they had monthly reviews and were reprimanded or, scolded if they didn't meet those goals.
Yeah, and talking about all this, that's exactly who I thought about. And last week, Dr. Pontius, who is a part of that St. Mary's group, he's big on research. He's been, he's been our OKPRN president for years, and he's not currently, but only because his time had expired on being able to do that. But he's been with OKPRN, which, as you all know, is a research network. And he's been with them since before their existence. He was part of the creation of it back in '94. And he last week had to completely resign, even as a member, because he simply doesn't have time. And this is someone that loves research. He loves to get involved. He's been involved for many, many years, like I said, since at least '94. And he doesn't have space for it. He doesn't have room for it, and something had to give. And that's just a sad deal.
And if you read his comments in, what is it, RPR?
EPR?
EP, no.
Oh, Dr. Mold's RPR stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's sad. I mean, it's just
he's frustrated.
Yeah. Well, he talks about can't get employees to do anything. Don't even ask them.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. And anyway.
And talking about that, I have a question, but that also made me think of something as well, as everybody is, talking about the pay structure and all of that. I think too, one of the things that's happening, and it's when you look at the larger healthcare organizations down to your smaller healthcare organizations, as Deanne was talking about, them having the quota of, how many patients they have to see a day and all of that. So even your larger healthcare systems are struggling with a version of that as well. They went from already having to endure that, and typically that's based on an RVU system, is what they're getting paid on. And so they have a quota for so many patients a day because that's X amount of RVUs. And that's the way the larger, your Mercies, your Integris, and that were getting paid. And I totally forgot that it just, like I said, kind of spurred that one of those organizations have gone a step further now. And it makes me wonder if, some of the others will jump on board with that as well. Instead of being paid for RVUs, they've always had the extra bonus, as Courtney was talking about, for their measures, their selected measures under, being part of an ACO. But they are shifting to a pay structure now that matches that for these providers. So it's not just something that they're looking at as, oh, potentially we're going to get this extra bonus for hitting these, and then we have to, you know, meet this minimum quota of patients. They're going to start getting paid off of their quality metrics. And so many of them, that is such a huge struggle to even understand the metrics. They as the physician provider can't do it themselves. They have to have help from the staff to meet those, because it's asking questions, clicking these buttons, whatever, and they have 15 minutes. There's no way that they could do it all themselves. And now we've got this staff shortage, which is all over the place, clinics, hospitals, everywhere. And, you know, part of that is just, we already had a shortage. Part of it is they came on through with the CMS mandate for the vaccine, quite honestly, and you've got a lot of people that left because they refused to get the vaccine. I had a lady doing my nails last week that has a cardiovascular ultrasound certificate. She's certified, and that's what she was doing. She's pregnant, but because the mandate came down, she had to leave. Yeah. She's doing nails. You know, it's just crazy. So, I mean, there's so many pressures coming down on all of these workers. And then, you know, having to deal with not having enough staff already to just take care of patients in general. And now they've got this whole new set of rules, regulations that they're all dealing with, whether it is, you know, we want you to see so many patients a day, or you've got to make sure that every quality metric, the box is checked, and they can't do it. And these physicians are, you know, working however many hours a day, a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. You know, it's just not sustainable for them. Anyway, it's just, the whole thing is just crazy. The changes, you know, just in the time of, you know, like me being in healthcare personally, I just am floored. You know, it's just kind of unbelievable, the things that are happening. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I did have a question. Going back to the spreadsheet, looking at the clinics that declined prior to 11/22 and or a second reach to those clinics. So I want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, because I have clinics, when we started talking about that new protocol being rolled out, which was like the beginning of November, and on our meetings, you know, at that time it was said, hey, you can go ahead and reach out to these clinics that have already declined and let them know, like, this is a possibility. We may be looking at this, right? So there's clinics that I did reach out to before the 11/22 date that had already declined or whatever. And then I have clinics that, you know, I went out and it was the flower shop or whatever. So based on what you're saying, I need to go in and make sure that I do another enrollment status, initiate another enrollment status for those clinics. And if it's like one that has closed, or one that, like I said, I had already reached out to, I'm not going to reach out to them again. Do I just put a note in the declined status, or do you want me to go ahead and actually create a new encounter and just put in there on such and such a date, or clinic was closed, or what? I just feel kind of odd, because it's like, well, I didn't contact them after that to really do another encounter, but I can't contact them again. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you are correct that yes, you will create a second enrollment status form for any clinic that you reached out to a second time after they had declined. And we use that as kind of, we use a very specific date of 11/22, because that was the date that we received the approved IRB. That was just an easy date to use. So yes, you're right, Christy. We were talking about it a few weeks before it was actually approved. And so if you had reached out to your practices a second time because they had previously declined based on that criteria, and you had reached out based on what would be the new criteria, then yes, you will create a second enrollment status with that date at that time and what their answer was at that point, if they declined or whatever. You keep in mind that all of your recruitment efforts, just like previously and just like always, you should have a recruitment encounter for every reach that you make. So keep in mind that we have our recruitment encounter forms, and then we have our enrolled practice encounter forms once they have been selected for a cohort. So any recruitment reach that you're making, you should be making an encounter note for anyway, but you'll do it for that date that you reached out to them. Did I answer that, or was that?
Made an encounter note at the time that would have technically been with the new criteria, even if it was before 11/22. As long as I go in and initiate another enrollment status, don't put in another encounter note, because an encounter note is already in there where I did that reach.
Oh, okay, yes. If you already did your encounter note for that reach, then you're right. Do not create a new encounter note.
Christy, I read some of those.
To do.
There's an indication, I think, on those that you had mentioned to me even before I read them. When I saw them, I put something on my Heather's comment section box. So that way you'll know just to go back and put it in that enrollment status form that Crystal's talking about, because you already did the note. So
yeah, okay. So I wasn't understanding that you'd already done the note. So yes, if you've already done the note at that time, back in time, then you do not need to do another encounter note. But yes, you will need to complete that second enrollment status form.
Okay, that's what I thought. So thanks for the clarification. And I did on my spreadsheet, indicate that in the OFIC notes that,
Perfect.
I had reached prior to with the new criteria or whatever.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So let's go ahead. Is there any other questions regarding this home tab? And you know my policy, you can always come back later and ask. Something comes up, and I'm sure something will come up as you start getting in here. Okay, so Heather, choose a tab to go on, and let's start looking at these legends. All right, Kathy, you are our current guinea pig now. Heather, if you can go ahead and zoom in on those legends a little bit more. Let's talk about those real quick. Okay, so on the left-hand side, this legend that is titled organization/group status, and then you have a total. Those are going to signify what I'm going to say is the left side of your spreadsheet. And that is simply identifying, based on what you have let me know, that is simply identifying if that clinic or that row is part of a health system or group of practices. And if it is not highlighted, as you can see in the one cell there, it says no highlight for column A through F, means that they are not part of a health system or group. And the calculations there are automatically done for both of these legends. The calculations are automatically done. So please don't ever go in there and mess with the numbers on there, and it will automatically be done. And now it is based on like cell E160, for instance. That calculation is based on the number of, it's counting the number of no's in column B. And then cell E, whoops, sorry. Yeah, that's exactly right. That in column B, whether you identified yes or no, that that particular clinic as part of the health system. And then column E161 is counting up the number of yeses in that B column that Heather just showed. And so all of the yeses are highlighted yellow, and all of the no's are highlighted, or I'm sorry, is not highlighted at all. It's just white. And then just below that on E162, it is just the total of all of that. And that number ultimately should be reflected in the home spreadsheet. So 155 right there for Kathy. See, that matches that 155 there. If you are finding that is not matching that spreadsheet, then that's probably because you have not identified yes or no for that clinic, if they are part of the health system group or not. So that should be an easy calculation there. So, or reference. So let's go ahead and go back to Kathy's. Now, looking over here on the right side legend, these numbers are calculated based on the color of the cell in column G. Okay, so it's really important. This is going to be the hard part about this spreadsheet for everyone. It's really important that you get the exact color that you're needing in the spreadsheet based on what is in this legend. So click on maybe that turquoise, Heather, and then go up to your highlight button. And so because Heather has added colors in here, we're hoping, and please let us know if this is not showing up. See where it says recent colors, and it's adding that bottom row of colors on her drop-down menu there that she's showing. Those are the colors that she's used periodically throughout creating this spreadsheet. So those colors should be in there to be able to determine what color you will use in the spreadsheet. We are happy to help you and walk you through any of that, should that become an issue or a problem for your spreadsheet. So if you can, whenever you get a moment after we send this out, if you can check to see if that recent colors row shows up in your drop-down menu for your highlights, that would be great. And we'll remind you that in the email. But because the totals on that legend, they're based on the color of a cell in G. So it's really important that we are doing the same color. So on that legend, red and Deanne, this is where, and I think Missy also, you asked a similar question, but Deanne, you brought up the location of the prison clinic, that they're not eligible for the project. So as you can see for red, that should identify any clinic that we will not, cannot, do not recruit for whatever reason. They have voiced that they declined, they are closed clinic, they are not eligible for whatever reason, they will be marked as red. So you no longer need to reach out to them. The green implies that your recruitment is complete. For that, you have recruited them, is what that means. For the turquoise, 1122, and let's see, is that showing the whole cell there? Okay, so this is a clinic that, or I'm sorry, this is a group, you will mark them turquoise if they fall under the category that they have declined prior to or on 1122, and they need to be reached out to. Okay, so this is going to identify to you, this is a clinic I need to give a second reach to. Purple identifies, is that, give that whole thing there? Okay, yeah, it is. These purple identifies the clinics that you have yet to reach out to for any contact at all. So it's a brand new clinic to you, you've never reached out to them. And then orange identifies they are an enrolled clinic. And let's see, go back up to green, Heather. I'm sorry, I feel like that's not the entire description. Oh, pending. Okay, I felt like that wasn't right, but So pending recruitment completion, meaning that you are in progress of working with them. Maybe you're following up with them. Heather, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of these definitions. And then going back down to orange on the bottom, that means that they are an enrolled clinic, or you have recruited them and they are in the process of being an enrolled clinic and should be selected for a cohort. So by the end of this work on this spreadsheet, we should ultimately have a spreadsheet that I told Heather will look like Bedlam. It should look like red and orange, not exactly crimson, I get it, but it will be red and orange by the time we have completely exhausted our list. So before I go any further, what questions do you have about the categories here?
Is there a category for health systems, or do we just put that in there as still reaching them? Okay, yellow. Okay.
Yeah, so you will
Oh,
not
okay. I see.
change, yeah, you will not change the left side of your spreadsheet unless you happen to have a blank where you didn't answer in column B, a yes or a no. And then once you identify them as yes, then you will highlight just that section as yellow. And then the remaining section of that row will be identified by your second color legend on the right, on the bottom here. So yes, they will be clinics not contacted yet, or if it is a health system that you have reached out to, but you haven't finished because you're waiting to hear back from our leadership, then they would be green. If you've never reached out to them, then they'll be purple. We good on that? Okay. So while we're talking about the health systems, column B.
Crystal, sorry, I don't know what's going on. I can't, I keep trying to unmute and it never does it timely. I don't know what's going on today.
Says,
I'm
no,
so
you
sorry.
shall not speak.
I'm sorry. So on the recruitment status, I see the, the decline prior to the 1122. I need to reach out again, but okay, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I still haven't got my monitor set up, so I'm like looking like really tiny. So it does in red, it does say it's declined. So those are like together. Okay. So
Yeah,
that's
so the red,
that's true decline. And then that, because I got a kick out of Bedlam, and so I was making that happen and going into my red and orange and stuff and seeing how, like, where those other colors will go away. So now I understand it. I'm sorry. I think I just had to talk it
no,
through.
that's okay.
Sorry.
You should have heard Heather and me last week going through this. So no, please ask questions.
It took me
I was just
15 minutes just to comprehend column A.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten there yet. Go ahead, Courtney. I'm sorry.
I was the same way. I was going, wait, but how is it going to be all red and orange? And I had to process it too.
Okay, well, good. So does anybody else need clarification on that? Because it can be a little bit confusing. Like I said, Heather and I spent some time. We even minimized the categories. There were actually more categories than this. And so let me know if it is not clear.
Okay, another question, sorry.
Yeah.
On the healthcare systems, and I'll use Mercy as an example, because, we have one that's participating, finally on a second reach, gotten to another executive, level and got a response from her. They haven't declined. She's, passing the information along. However, that would be for all of the Mercy clinics, even though we only have one that's actually participating, and they're all listed in here, but obviously individually I haven't contacted the specific clinics because I'm at a higher reach. So would I go ahead and mark those green on the right?
Does your correspondence with this leadership person, will their answer reflect every one of those? If yes, then yes, you will put that on there. If it's only reflective of that one location that they may be at or be responsible for, then you will only do it for the one.
Okay, now this would be for all locations.
Yeah.
So Christy, with that being said, has the contact's been made then, correct?
Yeah, and she actually responded. It was the contact that Dr. Webb had given us, and Dr. Crawford sent her an email, and so did I. And then I sent her another email basically saying, you know, just following up to see if you read Dr. Crawford's email. And she finally did respond and say that she was going to be talking to the providers to see if anybody other than the one clinic was interested. And I've entered all of that, like that note is in RedCap, but I just wanted to make sure as far as my spreadsheet goes, because ultimately the executive, I mean, I guess, and here's where I'm like, well, I mean, executive has to make the quote decision as to whether these clinics can participate, but then each clinic has to decide, do they want to participate? And I won't be reaching out to each one of those clinics individually. The executive leadership is reaching out to them. And then if they decide that they're interested, you know, my response to her was, you know, keep me updated. Like if we can even set up a meeting and have Dr. Crawford talk to anybody that's interested or whatever, we'd be willing to do that.
Okay, did that direction make sense then for that?
So Christy, let me ask something further. I know that you said that you entered for, was it a specific location or did you have like Mercy as an admin in RedCap?
Yes, I had Mercy as an admin in RedCap. That was from the get-go of when we started all this. And then I went back in and did a new, you know, status enrollment update because we reached out again.
And Crystal, you correct me if I'm wrong. It was my understanding when we talked about this with Jewel that at the time, if it was just somebody that we didn't know that could not make decisions, that no, we could enter them just as an admin type of thing. And then if we get decisions made or we get somebody that's a decision maker for that group, then we could then enter those into RedCap, even though not each individual PF has technically made a contact to that clinic. I think it needs to go in there because if we've reached a leader level, I mean, it's going to show, it's going to reflect that, because my problem here is I have trouble deciphering what should be entered in RedCap and what should not. Everything that's on these spreadsheets right now has been entered in RedCap. As long as I identified the clinic ID from it, and then I put it into the spreadsheet. So in my opinion, I think that all of those locations need to be entered. What are your thoughts, Crystal?
Well, and I think that's, or I thought that's where we were going on that conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think at this point with Mercy, then Christy, I can go through, since I have the total list, and kind of I can filter for who's got Mercy locations, and then you'll be able to see that for which PFs need to look at those Mercy locations in your spreadsheet to enter those.
Now the leadership is different between here and Ardmore.
Okay, well then I need further direction as to who they are leadership for what clinics.
Everybody in the metro.
In the OKC metro?
Mm-hmm.
OKC metro only?
Well, OKC metro and outlying as far as like Yukon,
suburbs of the city.
Edmond, Oklahoma City. But that group out of Ardmore, if they fall under the Ardmore Hospital, they have their own set of leadership, or Ada, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jennifer. They have their own set of leadership down in that area, kind of like the executive leadership here, because the ultimate leadership that is over all of them is in St. Louis, but they don't have anything to do with the decision making of what we're talking about.
Okay, then I think we could cipher it out between, and it may just be your clinics, but we'll take a close look just to make sure we're capturing all of them. And then we can figure out which ones we need to get entered.
And also keep in mind that, yes, we are pulling numbers. I get the correlation. We are pulling numbers from REDCap and SSRS to be able to keep this spreadsheet updated as much as possible. This spreadsheet, though, I want you to be able to utilize it with these colors that will most help you. So if it means, Christy, that you go through and you are highlighting every one of those green instead of purple, and because that's helpful to you, if you can just explain that in the notes section, you can just copy and paste it in every one of those that working with Mercy leadership or working with Mercy, whatever their title is.
And I actually have done that in my OFIC notes on all of those Mercy clinics. It does say that, working with Mercy admin currently.
Okay. So, I mean, this spreadsheet is not meant by any means to replace our encounter notes, which, with that being said, also the OFIC notes column E, we just need the bare bones information. We don't necessarily need what you would put in the detail, the level of detail that you would put in an EPR note. That's just TMI for this purpose. We just need closed doors, participated and do no harm. We see that there. It's this type of practice, that type of practice, or whatever the case is. So that's the type of information we need there. And then, so hopefully we got that result. I know we're after 4:30, and so I really need to kind of move on. So if that's very specific to Mercy, then let's definitely get together at another time frame so we can finish reviewing that and figure out if there are further details on that. And same thing for any other organization. If there are specific things that we need to talk about for your organizations, then let's definitely dig a little bit deeper on that. So now column B is, like I was saying a while ago, for column B, that is asking you to identify, is the practice part of a group or big health system, yes or no? Every single cell in that column should be complete with a yes or a no. There is no other option. Either yes, they are, or no, they're not. If they're a veterinary clinic that sees only animals, then the answer should be no. If they are Integris or Mercy and they're way out 500 miles away, the answer is yes, because they are part of Integris or Mercy or whatever. If you do need assistance identifying about a specific practice, because as we know with all of this, there's always an outlier that always makes us question. So feel free to reach out and ask. So B column should be complete with something. Now we're going to go to the hard one, which is A. When you read A, you need to read it very, very literal when you're asking this. Okay. Has there been a second reach since originally? Oh, click back on that cell. I was reading the top. I'm sorry. Okay. Has there been a second reach since originally declined on or before 11/22/21? And your options on the drop down menu for each cell is yes, no, NA. If a clinic has not given a decline status on or before 11/22/21, they will be marked as NA. So if you did not receive a decline from a practice in that time frame of 11/22/21, if you did not receive a decline during that time frame, they will be marked as NA, always, every time, even if you've reached out to them since then, even if they have declined since 11/22/21. If they fall in the category of 11/22/21 and earlier, and they had declined during that time frame, then you will need to move further and determine, yes, I have reached out to them a second time, or no, I have not reached out to them a second time. No will indicate one of two things. They're pending your reach, and therefore their right side of their row will be that color accordingly. Or if it's a no and they are, oh, what does turquoise mean, Heather?
Sorry, the turquoise is that they originally declined before, on or before 11/22/21, but they still need a reach. There's
Okay,
one
they still need, okay,
in there when I
yes.
reviewed.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the other reason why you would have a no would be because they do qualify for a reach, but you haven't done it yet. So they're pending that reach. So again, this is a very literal question. They are NA if they did not decline during that time frame of 11/22 and earlier or prior. That is the only time they are in NA. So if you reached out to them 3 weeks ago, which is after 11/22/21, and they declined at that point, they're still marked as NA, but you will mark them on the right side as red declined. How incredibly confusing was that?
Crystal,
Yeah.
if Dr. Crawford sent an email to the medical director regarding a group of clinics, is that considered a yes, they've had a reach, or is that considered a no until I actually make the reach myself?
So hey, Renee, can you go ahead and mute? Thank you. So if Dr. Crawford has reached out to a health system on your behalf or on behalf of the project, and you have not received an answer yet, and that was a clinic that previously declined, then they would be marked as no turquoise, because you're still waiting for an answer. Does that make sense, Renee?
Okay, gotcha.
Who else? Who else might have a question? And if you need clarifying on this, please ask. I had Heather's brain so scrambled last night talking about this that once it finally clicked, she's like, oh, okay. So do not hesitate to ask. That is one cell that you will answer very, very literal to its column header. Okay. Well, if it does come up once you're in there working and you have a moment that you're like, oh my God, I can't think straight, I need clarification, holler at us. We're happy to help. So one more thing, I think one more thing that I can think of right now anyway is column F. Heather has gone through and she has really dug in pretty deep on where most everybody is based on the information you have provided to date. And she has added her comments in there. Some are questions, some are she needs further clarification. Some are things that she had noticed and again needs further clarification, that sort of thing. So when you receive this spreadsheet, definitely pay attention to column F. So our homework, if you will, which I hate using that word because it brings anxiety, but our task for this week, and the reason why we pressed to have this meeting sooner rather than later, is to continue your minimum of your 1 call a day or 5 calls a week, however you are planning that out. Certainly continue that minimum quota, but I would love for you to go through and identify your practice on column A. And again, let us know what questions you have. If it's just not clicking, that's okay. Please holler at us. Don't assume that, it's one thing. And like I said, it's very literal to the question. So we want you to go through and complete column A, and then go through and check out column F and see what questions or comments Heather might have made on our behalf specific to that clinic. And then we'll, when we send this spreadsheet out, the updated spreadsheet out to everybody, we will put that deadline in there of end of business Friday. This is something that we will begin looking at on Monday morning to be able to present on Wednesday. So what we have today is going to be presented tomorrow, and then we'll present it again to our project leadership next Wednesday. So what we collect from you into business Friday, we'll share with them next Wednesday.
Is there any way that we can have the recording?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be good. Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And guys, I know that this can be a lot of information. I think once you get in there and you start looking at each clinic individually as you're working with them, it'll make more sense. But if it doesn't, please reach out to us. I want you to be set up for success, just like we are when we go into those Wednesday meetings. We want to be able to show all the hard work that you're doing.
Because my page is open, I have a quick question on row 125 and row 126.
Okay.
This Feudal Park Clinic, but over at column J, it says OU Physicians Tulsa.
And that's actually probably Missy's clinic, the OU.
That's all I got to say is, yeah. It's like that, Kathy. That's weird.
So we need to definitely look over everything. Just to make sure. Yeah.
So just update it, or just.
Well, that's a good point. If you are making updates, we need to have a way of identifying what those updates are, because what Heather is doing is she's going to hold the master list, because there's so many people making updates. We don't want to just simply copy and paste. We want to be sure that everything's aligning, that all the calculations are still in place. So maybe bolding a cell, will that work? Maybe bolding the letters in there in a cell. That way it'll pop out to us that, hey, this cell had an update. Like that, for instance, is a great update that we need to know about, because obviously those do not match up at all. But maybe will that work, Heather, do you think?
It could, yes. And I'll double check the list that I got back from you, Kathy, just to see that. The most thing that I was paying attention to was column B, whether it was yes or no. And then I was making comments based off of what was in the EPR. So I will admit I did not look at this section of C as much, as long as B was answered. So I'll double check that.
Okay. I mean, would it help if the changes we made, bold it? Will it be easy to read if we change the text color, or just leave it, just bold it and just leave it as black?
I would say if you're going to make a change, note it right here.
Okay.
And then bold it. Yeah. So like this, if you come in here to a thing and go, this is incorrect, and then you tell me blah, 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 whatever it is. So if you'll just come in here and just highlight that in bold, then I should be able to see that that's a change.
Okay, that works.
All right.
And if you want to make it red, I'm okay with that too, because this side over here is only yellow and white. So I'm okay if you want to change it to red. That's fine.
What if you
Whatever
just
makes
change
it
the
pop
font
out
to
for you.
red? You change the font to red and bold?
Yeah, that's fine. Just make those changes here in section E, in column E. So that way nothing else is messed with and I don't have to go pull old spreadsheets to see what it was when I got it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. So any changes that need to be made should be voiced in your E cell. Okay. And yeah, if you want to change the font color, that's a good idea because it'll stand out, bold it. Yeah. Good catch, Kathy. I couldn't even see that. Geez, and I'm on my bigger screen. All right, what other questions? Those will be your two biggest tasks. Well, I guess three, if we include the continue of the minimum recruitment efforts, but then completing column A, completing column or understanding and reviewing column F. And then of course, you now know that any changes that are occurring regarding your practice, you'll put in the E cell for that row. All right, so once again, that legend at the bottom that shows the organization total, that's based off of column B. If you see that that number is not matching the number on the home tab, that means you have a blank in there somewhere. So you might go back and review that. And we'll mention that in the email too, when we send this out to you. All right, well.
Happy snow day to us, huh?
I know, right?
The kids don't drive us all crazy.
If they don't, this will. I know. Let's hope that's not the case. I have not at all kept up with the chat. Was there anything at all that we need to reflect on or go back and review or have a question about?
I think we caught everything as we were going.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, ladies, how much more do you hate me now? Because I love you. Hopefully this is making your recruitment efforts a little easier as far as organization goes and helping along the way and not adding more stress to your world.
Can I just say, not so much that I like it for personal use necessarily, but I like the fact that this gives leadership an overview of what we really deal with. So it doesn't look like, one person has, like, for instance, for Kathy and Missy, it looks like they have so many clinics because they're covering Tulsa, and same with Oklahoma City. But you get to see how many of those are those organizations, those bigger networks, and that, because that is probably one of our, every time we have to recruit, that's one of those bridges that we always have to come across. Is we know the clinic can't decide to do it, so therefore we got to we have to wait for leadership, and so it makes our numbers look like we're not really doing much, but we are.
Well, and it's that added exclamation point that leadership needs to hear. Hey, we're waiting on you on this big giant chunk of number, 534. So we need your help too in this. You said you would help. We need your help. We're calling on you. So it holds them accountable as well. So, and I agree. And that's actually where the birth of this spreadsheet came from, was because we wanted to show what you guys were doing. We knew you were recruiting. We knew you were having a hard time in certain areas. We knew all of these things, but we couldn't bring it all together and show a team picture until we came up with this. And they were super excited to see it last week and really be able to dive deep into it, and nothing but positive words. And they were happy to see these efforts, and they continue to be happy to see the weekly reports. So, I mean, you guys are doing great. And Renee says, thank you to Heather and me. Thank you guys. We see what y'all are doing. You know, it's not easy. I know we talked about some of our woes and everything that we're dealing with right now, and it's not easy. And I know that this is not your only project that you're not only working on, but not your only project you're recruiting for. So, we continue to go to bat for you best we can.
You may also list the recent weather activities in so many areas. I mean, I've had practices that are closed for 3 days because of weather.
Yeah, we've talked about that in recent weeks, and not only with our clinics having to deal with COVID, but our team having to deal with COVID. If it's not us getting sick, it's kiddos getting sick, or other loved ones, and it's just, we're all dealing with different crud. So it's January was tough. January was tough on everybody. But we do try and talk about each one of those things and remind them of those things week after week. But as long as we continue to see your push and your effort, then that's all we can do. And I forget who said it, but that's part of the research too. Somebody had said earlier in this meeting, that's part of the research too, is this is the day and time we're dealing with all of this, and this is our result. So. All right, ladies. Well, as always, feel free to reach out to us even after this meeting. This meeting was recorded, so we will get that shared once it's done with its little process that it has to do. That takes a little bit of time, but we'll get that sent out to you all as soon as that's done. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your, I don't even know what day it is. Is it Wednesday? Tuesday. So great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.